Dearest gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the town. We are your effervescent host, your neighborhood-friendly Kiwi, Tash from Middle-earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, currently writing her chaos romantic heroine era.
Settle down onto your favorite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and deep diving into the connections of our favorite characters. We cover both book, TV series, and notable social media, and therefore will contain spoilers.
God rest ye merry listeners. Today we enter a library where many stories are going on. Pen is trying her best to be herself, as this seems to be what Debling wants, but Portia is strong-arming her to play the debutante. Colin is trying his best to look occupied and unaffected, but is still watching Pen on the sly. Debling is noticing Pen watching Colin and literally steps in to Colin block her view. Mirrors and themes abound.
Now we must make haste into today's episode. Okay, we have a deeply rich Greek culture coded episode, this one. So in today's episode, we are going to be looking at season 3, episode 4, Lord Fuller's collection opening, which is quite exciting because there's really a lot of symbolism that happens in this episode, from both the undertone of the stories that are going on, the statues that are placed in the background, and I truly believe that a lot of these are very specifically chosen. It's not a quinkadink at the placement of them, especially Cupid's arrow. He's definitely got his eye on Colin. So the Queen's event begins at the library. This is Lord Fuller's collection. This is the first time that I think he's ever allowed people through his book collection. And I wonder whether it's I'm getting older. I want people to experience this while I'm still around. You know, when you can find joy in, okay, I will use the metaphor of adulthood, of Christmas as an adult. You hit a certain age, I don't know, somewhere in your mid-late teens, where Christmas is it loses a little bit of that spark and a little bit of that magic. And the older you get, I feel like you lose a little bit more of it. Less family can connect together for Christmas because you're each partnering up and you've got to separate, or you've got to work through Christmas, and it just loses a little bit of that magic. And then you have children and you get to watch the magic through their eyes. And I premise this as the same as what Lord Fuller is going through. He has enjoyed these books his life. They're starting to lose a little bit of their magic. He may not be able to read them anymore because of his advanced age. You can't look at the letters or whatnot. And so now he's opening up his collection so that he can see others enjoy it and get peripheral enjoyment out of them.
Yes, and I think that we're seeing a lot in this season of the personalities of the odd, okay? Yes. The people in the ton who have their own odd special interests, mm-hmm. And we see that they might get gossiped about behind their back or what have you. People will whisper, the Queen has no problem saying that Debling is boring, how Cressida's mother talks with Cressida about her, or how the other debutantes' mothers talk about him. They gossip a little bit, but they're too afraid to say anything too bad because he's eligible, right? And they don't want their daughters to hear anything super negative. So we see the deference that these men get, mostly men, mm-hmm. for having their thing.
Oddities,
Hawkins with the inventing and being...
This goes exactly back to the line that I think it was it Stanton or Wilding that said, with his level of wealth, he can be whatever he wants to be. He can be as mm-hmm. odd as he wants. He can be as garish as he wants. You can be all those things if you have the wealth and power to back them up, and you are a male.
Correct. And that's the important thing. You have to be basically a cis white male mm-hmm. with a crap ton of money, mm-hmm. and then you can act any way you want. And people will put up with it. People will allow it. Because normally in most societies, including in the animal world, if we're going to talk about, Debling being a conservationist and being, focusing on nature, kind of being a nature scientist or whatever. But even in the animal world, you see animals teach their young to be that animal. You see societies of animals ostracize animals that act differently, or, you know, animals and groups of animals have been studied for years, and you see that and the you know, I can't cite my sources right at this moment, but like, you know, studying crows and everything, crows literally stand around in groups and talk about things that happen. Like if one of their own is killed, they'll stand over the body and you see them talking, and they've figured out, like, they're literally like trying to figure out what happened. And if they believe, like, if it was one crow killed another crow, or if a crow's acting different, if somebody's taking too much food, they ostracize that one. They also see that in different species of monkey. You know, if a monkey is taking too much of the resources, they will ostracize that monkey. Like most groups of animals, like, share their resources and things, but if one is acting differently or odd or whatever, they ostracize them because they assume something's wrong. Like when one is old and frail, they start ostracizing them because they want them to get picked off if they're hunted, all of that stuff. So it's normal for survival in human society. Yes, it's normal in human society for the odd ones out to be ostracized, to be looked at differently. Like most of us, especially in, you know, generations of the Gen X variety, millennials, and I would even say
we can even see this playing out with the Mondrick family at the moment, is that they are saying, we will accept you. Yes, you are different. Yes, you are the outlier, but we will accept you as long as you acclimate to our way of life. If you try to maintain your way of life, no amount of money or power will be able to buy your way into our society.
Well, and they show up at their house, and you can see from the whistle down, like, they start getting invitations, not right away, because they're not at the
they really come flooding in after the queen's acceptance.
Well, they're not at the moon ball, but Lady Whistledown starts talking about them. Then they finally get invited to Stowell House is the first one, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then when, you know, there's still some stuff, like they're still in Whistledown, there's still a feature, then they get invited out even more. And then she gets invited.
Not Stowell House. Stowell House, sorry, is the first time that Alice dresses herself. Previously, they went to the the full moon ball.
Was it the moon?
It was the full moon ball where she dressed in old lady.
Oh yeah, because they were talking to Benedict.
Yes,
but they, like, even though they moved in like early on, they weren't invited to first things, and they were finally invited to that ball. You think about when that ball happened and the way the timing is with Bridgerton, that's at the end of episode 2. So if 4 to 6 weeks pass per episode, which is the norm, it's supposed to be like, or whatever, then this is over a month or so after they moved in. After they were given their title and they moved in and everything. So it took a minute.
This isn't peak season as well. Peak pond season, I mean.
Yeah, so, and it's not until they're not popular and their invitations aren't crazy until after they have their own ball and the queen shows up and the queen shows her appreciation in public to them, and then all of a sudden everyone's inviting them. So it's seriously a lot of who you know, but it's also about money and power connections. So you can be, and most of the time when you're eccentric, you don't really have a power connection. Your money is what keeps people being nice to you.
Yeah.
And we have that with Debling. We have that with Hawkins. And now we have that with Lord Fuller. Because do we even know that he's read those books? No, he just says he's been collecting them for years and he's finally ready for everyone to see them. So, and I literally think
that's a pretty good segue into Eloise's
Eloise's line. But he just wanted to me, it just looks like he wanted to wallpaper the walls in books before he let people in his house, because that's what it looks like to me.
Well, I mean, but the difference is, like, we've got the Cowper household that does have a lot of books in it, but as Eloise isn't excited by them, she walks in, she's not excited, she's like, it is like, is it Cressida who says it's like a mausoleum, is it not? You know, and that's, you can tell from Eloise's face.
Museum, and she wanted to say something else, so Cressida's like, no, it's like a mausoleum in here.
Yes. Yeah. And you can tell that Eloise isn't like, look at all these books that I now have access to read. It is Oh, okay.
I don't even
That's
know
the
what, I
vibe.
don't even want to know what those books are living in this house.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
going to be like finance books and like probably like how to what do you insects preserving insects.
Oh yeah, with the pins. What's that called?
Taxidermy insects. But I think it's got a specific name and it's for insects.
It does. I was almost there, and then you said taxidermy,
I
and it just
know,
flew
I know.
right out of my head.
I
I'm gonna look
know.
it up now
I'm
because I have
sorry.
to.
While you do
Okay.
that, it's right there, and I'm just my brain ain't braining. So the event begins, and what I find interesting is that it shows the Featheringtons arriving, and it shows Pen is framed between two statues as she arrives. So all of the statues,
Okay, this is just saying insect tax too.
okay, all
Entomology.
entomology. Thank you.
That's the study, but yeah, that's the
Yeah, yeah,
same
yeah,
thing.
yeah. So all of the statues kind of have like a very specific purpose, and statues back then of all the Greek gods and goddesses, they weren't just random statues. Like nowadays, you can go to any person's garden and they can have a statue, and it tends to have no meaning. But back then, I think they were very specifically chosen, and I couldn't find an exact replica, but based on the lady who she's holding like she's got like a shawly thing over her with one boob, and she's like holding like a vasey kind of thing. From all of the research I did, my best guess of who it is the goddess Iris, who is the goddess of communication and messages, which is very pollen coded to me. Like they communicated through messages, and that is how like a big amount of their connection was formed in my eyes. Like, yes, they've always had a connection, but I think that writing to each other in season two like cemented that connection.
Well, or just literally like as you enter this scene, watcher of this show, there is going to be so many themes
Yes.
and signs and signals, and keep your eyes open. You know what I mean?
Yes. So I definitely kept my eyes open in the scene and have looked at every single statue, every vase, every book that we possibly have seen in this scene. So Penelope enters into the room and she first picks up a book about the fabled Northwest Passage when Portia tells her off for reading. Men like to explain things to women. And she basically, the scene made me laugh so much because it is something that I have experienced myself, where
Yes.
Portia is saying, don't be educated because then a man can't educate to you. He can't mansplain to you if you educate yourself. And whatever would a man want with an educated woman when they can educate us at their leisure? They only want us
Mm-hmm.
to know what they want us to know, and we should not know any more than that. And let me preface this with not my husband. My husband would never ever dream of telling me not to read or educate myself, but there has definitely been situations in my life where I've been told not to read and not to fill my brain with stories of unrealistic expectations. And I love my dad.
And
I love my dad dearly. He is the loveliest dad in the world, but he is still a product of his time, and he was taught,
yeah.
certain
Well, and it's
certain
not even
things.
just dads, it's moms too. Because my notes that I took, legit, like the first time I watched this episode, which I would still say was in the, under 20 number,
Yeah.
um, when we first were like, yeah, we're definitely doing this pod together. And so I, went through, and these are like kind of my first impressions, but not first, but just going through analytically. And I was like, the scene, I'm just reading it. The scene where Penelope's mother has decided to take up the mantle for Colin Bridgerton, and she is trying to tell Penelope how to be with a man when they're at the library opening or whatever, is hilarious. She is giving all of the tropes that young ladies have been given for how you ensnare a man and how you attract a man. And it's absolutely true. I remember most of these being said to me, like, don't
Yes.
talk about books. You read
Yes.
so much. Men don't want a woman who appears smarter than them. Don't
Yeah.
do this. Men need to be able to explain things to you. You need to allow them to talk more. You need to laugh at their jokes, like all this crap. The way she tries to tell her daughter how to get a man and how to be courted by a man to be successful is really laughable, but it's relatable. The reason it's so funny, that meme, it's funny because it's true.
True.
It
Yes.
is so true. Women are told to, because we are taught to catch. Like, we're supposed to not chase. We're supposed to try and be pursued, but we're supposed to do all these things so a man would want to pursue us. We can't appear too smart. We can't be smarter than them. We can't read more than them. We can't get higher test scores than them.
We can't have desires.
Yes, we have to minimize ourselves. We have to shrink ourselves. We can't have interests. Our interests have to become their interests. And
no, our interests have to be them.
Well, yes, but there are specific situations that, like, you are expected to erase any bit of personality that you had, and you're supposed to mirror
basically what happened to Lady Danbury. She was raised to be someone's wife.
Well, like, I mean, okay, so you have the woman who, I think there's a ton of them out there, and this is absolutely a generalization, and I'm calling it out as one, but it's been used in media so much anyway, where you have the girlfriend or the wife who all of a sudden knows nothing about football, but she's the biggest football fan, right? Or like in my experience, where my ex introduced me to his favorite band, and then my favorite band was now no longer supposed to exist because he introduced me to the best band in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And how in the world could I like anyone else? And I literally, to the point of telling me that I could not love him if his band was not my favorite band now. But there's always like that situation where women have to kind of smooth their edges and erase a little bit of themselves. So I'm a
little bit cheeky because I will play it like that, and then I'll hit them with the wham. So I went to Stephen's Christmas work do last year, and one of his workmates come up, and I'm like, "Oh, you're wearing Jason Kelsey's jersey. You must be a big Eagles fan." He goes, "You know about the Eagles?" And I'm like,
"American football, yeah,
yeah." And he's like, because his wife is American, for reference, like that's why he follows, And I'm like, right. "Oh yeah, I love the Kels family. Oh, I loved that game. Did you see that? That was amazing." And he's like, "Oh, she knows." And I'm like, no, I just follow Taylor Swift. And the look of disappointment on his face, he's like, "But why do you know so much?" And I'm like, "Oh, I go deep into my loves, okay? Taylor Swift is my love, and they are just Taylor Swift adjacent. I know nothing." I'm like, I know nothing.
Yeah, when they get married, he's going to become Mr. Swift.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, and honestly, because women are told this so much, if you look at a lot of people's favorite romances, the woman is pursued and the woman is loved because she stands out from everyone else. All of the Bridgerton books are like that, right?
Yeah.
The women do not dumb themselves down. The women do not minimize themselves ever. And the man still loves them. I really,
and especially the classics. Like the classics really followed that kind of suit.
Anne of Green Gables. I just watched a TikTok where they did the scene where Gilbert is kind of like she won the Rolling's Reliable Baking Contest story, and she's all upset about it because that's not being a real author. And now her hopes are dashed, and he's trying to tell her, like, he's trying to encourage her, but he's trying to give her some real advice. And
don't give Anne real advice.
No, yeah, not real advice. But she's just so in her feels, and
she just wants to wallow.
She needs her wallow period. Like, they've been friends for years, and yes, he loves her, but he hasn't learned that she needs that day or two to be dramatic before she understands, like, okay, because she like gets mad, storms off, cries, goes in the house, and then she realizes later she made a ninny of herself.
Yeah.
But when Marilla tells her that he was like this because he loves her, and she's like, he loves me, like, he's not what I would consider romantic, and she's like, don't discount that. Like,
romance is not one way.
You made the Ruby Gillises and the Josie Pies look plain. She's basically saying you stood out, you challenged him. They were always challenging each other at school, and if you look at all of Jane Austen's stories, the heroines do not smudge their edges, and the men, the man falls for them exactly who they are.
I think that Gilbert loved Anne in part because he didn't have to be her husband. He had to be her equal. He wasn't her protector, her provider. He wasn't all of this and that. He was her equal. They did things together. They were a partnership. And that's the same with Colin and Pen. He's not going to have to be the super masculine male. He gets to be himself.
They're going to be a team. And I think that too, we see there's a lot of, and you and I have talked about the Polin coding and how Colin and Penn are kind of fashioned after Anne and Gilbert, because
Yeah.
when Anne shows up, she is condescended on because she's an orphan. She is looked
Yes.
at a certain way. People wrote her story for her in their minds, but Gilbert was blindsided by her because she didn't fall for his charm like everyone
Well,
else did
I
first.
love one of the first
And
lines was
two,
a pretty girl is a pretty girl.
yeah, they're all the same. Like,
No, no, no.
and he's
No, when what's his the rapey
oh,
boy?
you're talking Anne with an E, and I'm thinking the
Yeah.
1985
Yeah,
version.
yeah,
So
yeah. Sorry.
because in the 1985 version, Diana is telling her, well, he did say being smart is better than being pretty. And she's like, of course he meant to insult my looks,
Oh,
because she just wants to be mad at him so much.
but like
But
all of this is kind of to say that with Anne and Gilbert and Colin and Penelope, the point is that they and all of these really old schooly romance kind of things where these women are individuals and they are equals with their partner. I think that's the difference is, and that's what they're trying to show us in this specific scene, is that Devlin wants her to be something for him, but not with him. She is not going to be his partner.
Yeah.
She is not going to be his equal. They are not going to do things together. He is saying, hey, I need you to do this for me. And in return, you can have your peace and quiet and you can just do whatever you want to do, but we're not doing it together.
Yeah, and I think that Cressida was sort of right, that he views her as something that needs to be saved, and he is the champion of lost causes, but I think he understands the futility of the Great Auk. I think he understands the futility of his idea of going through the Northwest Passage.
I
but
think I think he
just
chooses that because it's whatever it's going to get him away from his family. Anything that's going
yeah.
to take him far away is what he that is the goal, is to get far away. It's not to get to the Great Orc, it's to get far away.
Well, and I think he wants, just like you got to remember too, side stories play in. So I think that he has the same desire that Colin does. Like, he wants to make a name for himself. He wants to have a legacy. He wants to point at something. This is from the book because this never got said in the show, but he wants to point at something and say, that is mine. Right?
Yeah.
That is what I did. And because he's choosing these things that are so close to impossible that it'll just make it incredibly great if he does it. Well, so the Penelope thing, I think, is if I can't save the Great Auk, if I can't make it through the Northwest Passage, I save this girl from complete social contagion. Her words. Social contagion, right?
Yeah. Well, okay, and on that note, I will explain just how impossible this task. So, throughout the 18th century, explorers from Great Britain, Denmark, France, Russia have all tried and failed to find the Northwest Passage. That is a practical route from the Atlantic seaboard of America to the Pacific that would shorten the trade route between Europe and the Far East. It's been like people have been trying and failing at this for literally centuries because it would massively speed up a bunch of, things going through, but it's incredibly dangerous because of the ice caps. So to this day, 2024, 200 years have passed. We still have not completely gone through the Northwest Passage. It is still unable to be traveled to this day. Only ever has a submarine made it through, and they believe that soon we may actually be able to go through because of the shrinking ice caps. But as it stands, it is so treacherous. And keep in mind that 200 years ago, boats were not made like they are today, where we've got these big metal...
They weren't steel.
No, they weren't steel. Whereas nowadays we have things, icebreaker boat that are designed for this kind of passage. But back then they did not. And he would have 1000% died.
He might as well have just gone in that willow wicker goose.
Yeah.
Duck. Swan, whatever, from the balloon thing. He might as well said, oh, I'm just going to hop in this and go through the Northwest Passage.
Essentially, it would have been the exact same outcome anyway. So we already know that the Great West Passage is a completely impossible task. The Great Auk.
And the Great Auk went extinct
in 1852. 1852.
Yeah.
So that is only a not even a 40-year period from where we're at today. And 40 years is not a huge time period. So it basically went extinct because it was kind of a little bit of a didn't have a lot of brain cells to rub together kind of a bird. And sailors ate it. That is the main reason for the extinction, is because they weren't too bright. And
low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, so a lot of sailors ate it. But
it was easy to trap.
With only 38 years between then and when it went extinct, realistically, it was probably no kind of conservation efforts were ever going to come. We're going to save it.
And you know what? That plays in so that it doesn't sound like we're just sticking to one side of the aisle here. I will play both sides of the aisle. With Colin and Debling both, when you look at the men and what they're brought up to believe a man should be and what a man should pursue, that also is very tropey and very like men have to leave a legacy. Men have to do great things. To be a man, you have to be, you have to their egos get cultivated. You have to make a lot of money. You have to do this. You have to do that. And
it's about them being remembered for generations to come.
Yeah. They need to create a legacy for themselves. They need to make a legacy. And then women are taught that they can't be more than a man. You can't emasculate a man. Well, if men weren't given if men were allowed to just be themselves and pursue their desires and their talents and their, I mean, because even look at Benedict, how he loved to sketch, but he never called it art. Right. It was never my art. It was always my sketches, my drawings, my doodles, whatever. And he never said that his sketchbook was actual practice or training. It was more like a journal, like he was writing in a journal. And Eloise had to tell him, I have two different books. I have my writing and I have my journal. And I think it's the same thing because it's art and he's a second son. Like that is not a normal pursuit for a second son. Because there's no notoriety in it necessarily. So like he never takes it seriously until Sophie because of what society's expectations are for men. And I think that's the beauty of this season is that this season, because we are looking at, the outcasts and the oddballs, we're looking at the people that are casting aside societal expectations, and it's really putting a microscope on societal expectations. Like, are these really healthy? Are these, and looking at the Regency period, I think makes it perfect to mirror like today, because so much of it happens today. Don't be too this or don't be too much. Women, you don't want to be too much. Don't be too much, and men have these natural feelings of inadequacy all the time because they're not living up to what they believe is expected of them as men. So we have women who feel like they're too much and men who feel like they're not enough. And you put them together and it's just toxic relationships abound. Secretly, they knew we were recording and maybe they came bearing.
I've already had 2 today. Please no.
Oh, no.
Will not
I hope
sleep
they didn't
for
bring
a
you coffee
month.
then. Maybe they brought you chocolate.
I usually stick to 1 coffee a day. I have chocolate.
I wish I had chocolate.
So basically the great auk it's not in the penguin family, but it looks. Mum, why are you calling me? I can literally see you sitting right there.
Wave.
I see
Point to your headset.
Okay, bringing
If she brings you cake, you cannot eat cake in front of me. I'll be mad.
It's Stephen's birthday.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'm gonna pause. All right, my parents have dropped off some cakes and have taken their leave so that we can with our recording. It's my husband's birthday today, so they just dropped off some wee goodies. Not realizing
darn you, whoever, for not creating trans yet. Like that was like literally one of my favorite things about Star Trek. And why
I was gonna say blame Scotty. Beam me up, Scotty.
Literally his fault.
I know. All right, so where we were up to in our timeline is Lord Dibling is now approaching Penelope and Portia, and Portia is literally trying to dumb down Penelope to appease Dibling. Dibling seems to catch onto this, but kind of gives Portia an agreeable smile. He is a lot more cunning than people think. Like, he is very well aware of exactly what Portia is doing. He knows that Penelope is intelligent. He knows that she would be reading it for interest's sake, not because she doesn't understand what the words are or, anything that Portia is trying to play right now.
And I think that
he would not be a husband that was to be managed like she thinks.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't be there. He wouldn't need to be managed. But I think
Mm.
his knowing look, his little smirk, and that look he exchanges with Penn on her side, I think she's just glad somebody saw that her mom's as crazy as, she believes
Yeah.
she is. But on his side, I think that told him really all he needed to know, because back then parents were very influential about what suitors were.
He was going to have someone in his corner making his
Right.
wife do what he wanted.
Well, not even the wife part, but getting the wife. Like the way Portia was acting told him Portia wanted him
Yes.
to propose. Portia wanted.
Yeah.
So in the end, even if Penelope did get another suitor, he kind of felt like he had an in, because he knew he checked all of Portia's boxes, and the way she was acting kind of confirmed that for him. So he was like, okay.
But I also think it was realizing that he would always have an ally with Portia, because Portia goes with the money and she doesn't care about her daughters. She cares about the money and influence.
Well, and she'd be the woman walking around saying, "My favorite child is my son-in-law." Have you seen those t-shirts? Yeah. Like that would be Portia.
I'm pretty sure my dad would wear that. He just loves Steve. Like, he loves me endlessly, but like he
I just think that
no wrong.
I mean, and I can't say that. I think she's going to realize there's more to Colin than she thought. I think we're going to see that in season 4. But I think that she would definitely be wearing that if Debling was the winner.
I think she'd be wearing a shirt that my favorite child is whoever earns me the money.
Yeah.
Most money,
whichever one's going to take care of me in my old age.
Yeah. Make my life. As this kind of is transpiring, Colin enters family and immediately begins Penelope. He spots her, but the camera is angled so that the vase by his head is aiming right at him. And what is on that vase? Cupid. With his bow and arrow drawn, releasing an arrow straight at Colin, which plays into the Eros and Psyche myth that I covered in my first ever episode of this. And I will always take it back there, because Greek myth, especially in this episode, are so influential. So the fact that they are saying Colin is very much in love. He has been caught by Cupid's bow. He has no choice in loving her anymore. It is part of who he is.
Yeah, but I think and this scene really plays out well in terms of rom-com, because there's so much going on all at the same time. Like, you have nothing a person is doing in this scene is what their true motivation is, if that makes sense. Like, they're all play acting at being adults. They're all play acting at being out in society, but nobody is doing what they truly want to be doing, except maybe Portia. Let's be real. Portia desperately wants to shove a daughter at a rich, eligible man and have it finally stick.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he comes in, and I think it's funny too. Like, he ends up across the room. I've not been able to see,
because he is looking around for Penelope. He spots her. He's happy, and then he sees that she is with Debling. And then he immediately himself over to Wilding and Stanton, both of whom
But he walks off to the same side that her and Debling are on. I want to see that scene, though, where he walks directly behind Debling, right by them, and like he's in Penelope's line of sight. Like, why couldn't I have had that edit? Like, why was that edited out? I would love it, because he had to have gone directly behind Debling to get around the room. I think
he would have as well, because he would have been like trying to listen in, hustle to see like where they're at in their courtship.
Like, I just want to see what Luke Newton's choices would have been there. Like, would he been like looking up at the books as he walked by, or would he been given direct eye contact? Like, would he have done a fake, like, I mean, I know it's the 1800s and it didn't mean the same thing, but like the equivalent of their thumbs up, you know what I mean? Like,
he walks past it and 2 thumbs up. Get it, girl.
Yeah, like, I'm going to appear supportive, but I'm not really, right?
I'm smiling,
he does end up,
but I'm dead inside.
Yeah. And he does end up across the room with Wilding and Stanton. But that's important and strategic, because we see him watching Penelope through the mirror, which is important, because Looking Glass, when you think of the stories, like through the Looking Glass and everything, the Looking Glass is actually mirroring something, but it's presenting the opposite. Like, when you go through the Looking Glass, it's the opposite of what is actually happening. So, like, because he's watching through the looking glass, he's seeing her be happy. He's seeing her and he thinks it's real, but it's not.
No, it is all very superficial. Just as is his relationship with Standing and Wilding, because they are both complaining about the attention being on Colin. We were both there. We both helped stop the balloon, but all of the fan fluttering is markedly aimed at you, you know?
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of, they're mirroring each other because they're both finally in a situation they had been wanting to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Like Colin has friends. He has somebody that he can walk up to at a ball that is not Penelope or his brothers. And Penelope is openly being courted by a man. They're both getting what they thought they wanted.
Colin is acting the way that society expects him to.
Yes, he thinks he's being successful. Like they're both in a situation where they think they're getting what they want, but they don't feel like, it's like when you order something off a menu and you're like, that sounds so good to me, and you get it and you try it and you're like, meh, it's not that good.
Well, and because they're both offered things in this scene, and both of them take up, they not jump at, but they both look at each other before agreeing upon. So Stanton and Wilding offer for Colin to join them for some revelry. With a glance at Penelope, he agrees to join them, hoping that the mindless sex distract him from his feelings. Pen is watching Colin talking to them and looks upset. She is very actively watching him. Debling notices. He clocks her. He notices her watching him and asks if she is looking for someone and moves his position to block her view of Colin. This is the first time I know that
Colin blocking.
This is the first time that I'm like, you were not dumb. You knew that there was, I mean, it's not the first time, obviously the dance scene, but this is the first time that I notice he actively moves his body to block her view. You are done with him. He is in the past. I am your future.
And we know he's observant because he completely observes what Portia is doing and he gives her a knowing look. He is observant. He is not an idiot. He is a smart person. I will give Debling that. He is smart. But that's the thing. And that's my whole issue with people calling Colin obtuse. You can't have it one way and then have it another way. You have if a person is smart, then they're going to notice the signals and signs. And he was not blindsided with her and Colin's feelings for each other at the end. He thought that his money and his estate would win. He thought he was the better man because he was what Portia wanted on paper. And we know Colin thought he was the better man because he was what Portia wanted on paper.
He doesn't understand that love trumps all. That love has no rationality. That love trumps because it's not rational. It's not something you can put a dollar figure on. It's not something that you can put a lifestyle on. You cannot control someone.
He also waited. We were having this conversation in our Polin Edits chat today. He also waited. He did not go to the moon ball at all. He shows up at Stowell House when Penelope is first out in society, but at her worst.
Yes.
Right? Completely at her worst. And she even says, so she is social contagion, but he doesn't approach her until after we see her get publicly ridiculed by Stanton and Wilding as well. And we know that he's friendly with them because he talked with them at Danbury Ball. So I honestly think he's following her trajectory, and he's came in and swooped, i.e. the bird behind him at Stowell House. He hunted her and he claimed his prize when she was at her lowest, when she was basically dead, like the deer on the wall. And so he's at a point now where he sees there's still sparks of hope. Although and he thought he caught her when all hope was killed.
I do not believe that he reads what Lady Whistledown. I believe that he may have asked staff about what had transpired, but I don't think he would ever lower himself to fill his mind with mindless gossip. Would be his kind of like he's very judgy about that kind of thing, which plays into the
he looks
that they're about to have. So
he doesn't do what everyone else does. He has to do something no one else wants to do. I agree with you there. But I also think because he is as smart as he is, and we don't know, and we may not find out till 4, because there's some sort of rumor that he's coming back for 4, but what if he figured it out? She does seem to talk about Whistledown an awful lot and wants people to think highly of Whistledown until that becomes like something that goes against her thing. Like, if Danbury knew the whole time and didn't say anything, we have to assume somebody else might have known the whole time and didn't say anything. And what if it was him? And
Could
he
very well.
used Whistledown to kind of read her.
So my next statue that I want to bring attention is in view with Penelope and Devling, and that is a statue of Socrates, who is most famous for being in the pursuit of truth, which is, I mean, everyone knows him as the father of philosophy, but more than that, he is in the pursuit of truth. Like, he didn't care who he upset, he didn't care that he was, punished by death because of it. Socrates chased truth no matter the cost. And I feel that's kind of what Penelope does as well. Like, well, as Lady Whistledown, like, she chases the truth, even if it does hurt those society. She's never writing about things. I was gonna say posting. That's a few sentences. She's never writing about, like, she's never adding flourishing to what she writes. It's always truth. Go.
Here are just some quotes by Socrates that I think it's important Socrates was in. Okay. Strong minds discuss ideas. Yes. Average minds discuss events. People. Weak minds discuss people.
Yeah.
To find yourself, think for yourself. By all means, marry. If you get a good wife, you'll become happy. If you get a bad one, you'll become a philosopher.
You become a philosopher. Half of my family consider themselves as philosophers.
If you don't get what you want, you suffer. If you get what you don't want, you suffer. Even when you get exactly what you want, you still suffer because you can't hold on to it forever. Your mind is your predicament. It wants to be free of change.
Yeah, so I think Socrates is very...
Hold on, one more because it's perfect.
Yeah.
Sometimes you put walls up not to keep people out, but to see who cares enough to break them down.
Very good.
It's very armor, like sounds like an armor conversation, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I think Polin definitely has put up armor as well. So that kind of leads into our conversation that transpires next, which is Devling asking about Penelope's love of reading. And she explains, he asks, what it is about reading and what you're reading. And she explains that she likes to read about love, history of connection, and hope for a better life, which is when Penelope scrunches up her face and questions whether that makes her seem vapid. Her answer is very Colin coded. Love, history, connection, something that like deep ingrained between.
Yeah. And I just want to point out that we know that when she scrunches up her face like that, she's having a moment of insecurity where she kind of wishes she hadn't said what she said, right?
It's like, oh no, I'm being a girl.
I wish I could pull that back. Yeah, I wish I could pull that back. And she uses the word vapid, which vapid is having no substance, being dull,
uninteresting,
unchallenging, uninteresting. And I think this plays into, because we have another, romance repair going on this season between her and Eloise. And I think that how she talks about herself, because a lot of what Penelope says is her self-talk is things she's heard other people say. And I think we get a little bit of a vision into what their friendship was before they both separated and spent time maturing and growing without each other. And I think that they were both readers, but Eloise especially is, she always wants to, she wants what the men have, and she wants what she can't have. So I think that she purposely read things like books of fact and whatever, and she didn't read books of love because she looked down on them because they weren't a noble pursuit.
She's had love and connection in her life. She has grown up in the shadow of her parents' love. She has known nothing but the truest of love.
And she doesn't want the natural path of that day for a woman, which is to, she didn't want to be Daphne. She didn't want a fairy tale love and all that stuff. But I think
even before Daphne, though, I think that Eloise has always grown up wanting what her brothers had. She's got love in her life. She knows what love is. She has seen it. That's not her interest. Penelope, on the other hand, has grown up without love in her life.
Yeah.
No love from her mother, no love from her siblings. So she is exactly the opposite. She wants that, and she's embarrassed by that because that makes her weak and it makes her a woman in her eyes.
But why does she believe that makes her weak?
Because Eloise has drilled that into her.
Yeah, I think what we learn here is that, we vilify Portia for
Yes.
condescending to Penelope and underestimating her. We know her sisters have condescended to her and treat her a certain way. And we know society has with Cressida and everything else. Well, now we get an understanding that her very best friend also has condescended to her. Like,
Yes.
even though she has been her most real true self with her, she also
Not
has
completely.
been, not completely, but she's
Yeah.
also been condescended about what she chooses to read. She's been condescended upon at times because Eloise wants Penelope to be exactly like her. She is that,
Well,
she's that type of
we got it from
masculine
the carriage
energy
ride.
that to love me, you must like what I like. You
Yes.
must be exactly like me. And Penelope wasn't, so she was trying to shape that by condescending it out of her, by talking bad about it. And you can see that in Penelope's, hold on, there's a hair on my face. It's getting on my nerves.
No.
Okay. Sensory issues. So
we don't stand you.
Can't stand our sense sometimes. And it totally, like,
you saw me tie
derail.
up my hair at the start because I was like,
you derail.
Yeah.
I mean, that hair, like the whole time I'm talking, I'm like, I probably am not making any sense because all I'm thinking is my hair.
Yeah, I do that.
But like Eloise wants her to be just like her. They think that a friendship is got to be between two people who are exactly like each other, and they're not. And Eloise tried to make her like her by bullying, in a way, this part of Penelope out of her.
Yes.
And
I think Penelope never felt safe enough to actually admit that she had those feelings to Eloise, because that was admitting a weak in herself. I want to get married. I want to fall in love. I want a family. She couldn't say those things because Penelope,
and she believed it was a weakness because of how much Eloise judged her for it, how much Eloise preached against it. But here's what I find interesting too. Like Colin, when you look at their history and you look at how they were friends, like how they would have been friends and how their dynamic would be, Colin is just as romantic, is just as fanciful. And I think he probably kept that spark alive in her due to her crush. I hate the word crush here because I really do think like she's loved him forever. He's loved her forever, whatever. But they cultivated that in each other. And he's always like championed her. And yes, we have the one comment heard round the world. But honestly, if you take it out of the context of the setting and you take it out of the lens of hearing it from, by Penelope, who has literally heard very little positive from anyone in her life, right? Yes. He said, I wouldn't dream of courting Penelope Feathering. Okay. She is always going to take in words with a negative lens because she's even heard compliments through a negative lens, because then she says, do not mock me, please. Right. Yeah. Genuine compliments. She's like, do not mock me. She sees it as mocking. But because in that moment,
if that sentence came as the reference,
Charithra. Yeah.
Edwina, thank you. My brain's like, Edwina said this comment and Penelope got defensive about it. If that same sentence had come from Eloise, it would have been mocking.
It would have been mocking.
And it wouldn't have been mocking from a place of wanting to hurt Penelope, but hurt society, not realizing that Penelope is part of society. Eloise is part of society, and words matter and they do hurt. I think she very unintentionally hurt Penelope multiple times over their friendship without even realizing it, by mocking the very thing that they are both part of.
Right. And I think that if you look at the way she spoke about Edwina when she walked over to Colin and she said, you think she's kind of referencing what happened with Marina the year before, because that was her. Like, I fell in love, for lack of a better word, with Marina, like she did. She fell for Marina's charms, and Marina turned out to be a schemer.
Yes.
With her mother's help.
Yeah.
But now she's looking at this girl and she's showing her distrust of her because she's so new and whatever. Like, I don't know if I can trust her yet. I don't want to trust her. And she doesn't want to trust her because she did just compliment her, and Penelope can't take compliments very well. Mm-hmm. So I think that, the I would not dream of courting Penelope Featherington can also be seen from a lens, if you look at it from a lens of a person who loves this person.
And from a lens of a person who has deep insecurity himself.
Yeah. I would not dream of courting
poor self-esteem.
Yeah. I would not dream of courting Penelope Featherington turns into she's out of my league. She's way too good for me. Mm-hmm. I could never live up to her family's expectations of what they're expecting for her. I would never be considered, You know, so the word usage matters, and the line was changed from the book, because in the book he said, I will not marry Penelope Featherington to his brothers, and it had to change because it had to sound negative to someone looking at it with a negative lens. But you also have to look at, I mean, not so much that it's a positive, because he's not even willing to try because he believes it's impossible, right? But now he's watching a man who literally leaps at the impossible, making an attempt, and now he's like, crap.
Okay, speaking of a man who leaps at the impossible, Dabbling is asked about novels of a man who goes away for a very long time and leaves his wife to tend to the estate and discounts it to be a book without sentiment, when in reality it is one of the most sentimental and
deep love stories.
Deep love. I mean, granted, it is also a story of its time, and he's a bit of a philanderer, and I have feelings about that. But this hypothetical book that he is talking about is very, very clearly about the Odyssey, and it is about Odysseus's travels from, he was one of the major war,
like a general type of thing.
Yeah, he was one of the major players in the Trojan War. And upon winning the Trojan War, he goes on this huge journey back home to his wife in Ithaca, because he is the king of Ithaca. And his men and himself make some pretty serious missteps on the way that leads it to be like 20 years separated from his wife. People make really, really selfish choices. They kill and steal and cheat, and he cheats on his wife. He has children to a whole other woman before deciding, hey, I really miss my wife. I'm bored of you now. And this little family that I've created here, I miss my wife and my son. So I'm going to go home. And she just helps him along his way. And I'm like, okay, mistress, you're chill. And
you're chill.
You're chill. I'd be like, excuse me, where's my child support? And he just hops on.
Yeah, but he's pillaged and cheated. He probably left her child support. He's like, you keep that. It's stolen. I don't need it.
I've just killed lots of mythical creatures along my way, beheaded, not beheaded, be-eyed Cyclops that have one eye, you've taken away. You've pissed off Poseidon. That is a real choice there. But Athena, my lovely goddess Athena, she was rooting for him the whole time, and she helps him along his journey on his way back to his wife. And what is his wife name? Penelope. Which I think is, once again, they've chosen this story very specifically. But
yes,
Penelope,
I think it's a red herring.
Yeah, Penelope did not have interests of her own per se, other than the tapestry that she did. So in the 20 years that he was gone, she basically just mourned not the loss of him per se, because he should have been back years ago, but she held out hope that he was still alive.
She did not believe he was dead. Yeah.
She held out hope that he was still alive, that he was returning to her. She held on to that dream. And even because obviously he was Odysseus was the king of Ithaca and she the queen, and therefore whoever married her, Penelope, became the king and would get all the wealth and all the lands and all the accolades that went with it. So very social climbing, which is very on par with what's happening in our story in Bridgerton at the moment. And basically what she does is she let me get through this part and then you get to do yours. So basically, eventually there's 200 suitors that come calling to the house wanting to marry her. She's got to filter through all these suitors, and they basically start pillaging all of their wealth by eating through and wearing his clothes and just completely overriding his land. And they eventually cotton on to the fact that she's not choosing anyone. And so she says, oh, okay, yeah, I've made you wait long enough. When I finish this tapestry, when my tapestry is complete, that will be my mourning period complete, and I will choose one of you to marry. And so during the day, all she does is tapestry. Then at night, she unpicks it so that but eventually one of the suitors, I can't remember who exactly, but one of them figures out what she's doing and says, no, you have to make a choice. And at this point, Odysseus is so close to getting back home. Not that she knows that, but the gods are in their favor. And eventually he does return home. Him and his son kill off all of the remaining suitors with their garden keeper, because apparently gardeners, maybe they're just really handy with a pair of shearers. And they live happily ever after.
Wasn't it Penelope and the gardener were the only two that recognized Odysseus?
No, it was the son. So Athena,
or the son and Penelope.
Athena disguised what he looked like so that he would be able to sneak back into the house. She warned him about all of the suitors in the house, that if he walked in there, they would just kill him off immediately so that they would be able
Mm-hmm.
to take his title. So she disguises him as an old kind of haggard man. But when the son happens to come by on his way back to the house, he'd been on his own travels looking for Odysseus. The mum had sent him out saying, I think your father's still alive. Go find him. He comes back, unable to find his father. He stops by the groundskeeper on his way up to the house. Athena lowers the disguise so that he can see that that is his father. And then they formulate this plan to go kill off all these suitors, pillaging the estate. It's a bit of a gory story. But Penelope, Odysseus' wife, did not have hobbies. She just sat there
No.
mourning, doing tapestry for 20 years. Like, she must have the worst RSI in history. Like, her poor hands.
She's got arthritis, carpal tunnel, you name it. But she was also trying to avoid
Marriage.
like she didn't care, and this plays into my freak out moment. She
Yes.
didn't care about the money.
No, never.
She didn't care about the estate. Her love for him is what mattered.
Yes.
She was preserving herself and preserving her love for her husband that she was sure was still alive. They could eat them out of house and home. She didn't care. They could spend as much money as they wanted. She didn't care. And that plays in because this isn't the only time we get an Odysseus themed conversation.
Yeah.
His rejection of her after Colin interrupts their dance when she chases him out. And he says, I will be gone for so long. I cannot have a woman who has affections elsewhere. And we think this is almost like a sign of jealousy or making sure an heir is his or whatever. But if we're supposed to theme Odysseus his way,
yes,
if the story was simply only brought up to reference him, we now know that he's not concerned with love. We already know this, right? We know he's not concerned with love. We know with enough of the stories going on in the ton at this time that people are very concerned about where their estate goes, where their money goes if they die. And what's he about to leave to do? Something that probably will lead to death.
Yes.
So his concern, he wants to find a woman who will be happy keeping his money in estate so it doesn't fall to anyone in his family because he hates them, and it doesn't fall to any other man because that's his cheating.
She could have just married him. He would have gone off in just a few weeks' time. He would have died off. She could have married Colin and gotten the estate and gotten all the money
and still had little Lord Featherington
and all the caracals. Her mother could have had 24 caracals.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine? She marries him, then finds out he's dead, then Colin comes in, then they have his whole estate, and then they have the first male heir to the Featherington estate. Like that would be a mess. That would be like Jerry Springer. But his whole conversation and the way he says it, like
what is Lord Dundas hosting the Jerry Springer show now?
Yeah, Lord Dundas. And your DNA test says that you are not whatever, like it plays in. But that whole conversation to me is Odysseus coded because he's not like where Penelope was more concerned about her love for Odysseus and saving her love and not caring about the estate. We know that Debling's concern is his estate and keeping that intact for if he maybe comes back. And I think even if he doesn't, because he doesn't want it to go to a box, shall we say, quote unquote.
Isn't it funny that this story is touted as being like undying love, unbreakable love? Penelope was true to Odysseus the whole time. Odysseus was not true. He married someone else, essentially. He had children with another woman, and then he goes, well, I'm done with you now, so I'm going to go back to my wife.
But since the dawn of time, since the dawn of patriarchy, most love stories, even epic love stories, the woman is untouched. But the man has had a history.
Yes.
The man has to go out and learn. I mean, even
we had to be pure.
Romeo and Juliet. Juliet is only 13.
He was in love with her cousin, wasn't he?
He was dating Rosamund, and that was her cousin. Yeah. So, and then, but even if you look at, I mean, and I know Bridgerton classic, but you know,
it will be one day
when Colin and Penelope are having their first time, and he says stuff he says, and she goes, well, how do you know? Because she's a questioning little thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, just trust me.
Just trust me.
Like he doesn't want to say, like, you know, I've had experience. But that's the thing. Men were supposed to go out and sow their wild oats. They were supposed to go out and spread their seed, but not get anyone pregnant.
I do think it's funny that to most people out there, if you don't dig too deep into it, most people would say that the Odyssey is a love story. At the
Well, and if you
at the
read most
core
of
of
the
it all,
if you read the
the
abridged
Iliad.
versions, if you
Oh,
read the shortened down
yeah,
versions, because the Odyssey and the Iliad are very long.
very long. Yeah, I read them
If
both.
you read the synopses, usually it does cut out a lot of that stuff because that's easy stuff to cut out, and they
Mhm.
get to paint the man in a much better light.
Yes, yes. But it is funny that he thinks it is a book without sin. But the double meaning
And the
is
reason he does is because he's watching all those suitors eat and drink all his money away.
it's like this is not how this was meant to play out. Like I'm lost at sea. All I've got is my merry seamen along my way.
Right.
Ooh.
Okay, wife. So I come home. I come home to you. Yeah, it took me 20 years, but you literally let them party and eat all my food and live in my house this long?
And wear my undies. Jeez.
Right.
Jeez Louise. Okay, so Debling, after all of this, explains that it would be a practical match, aka whispered tone, not a love match.
Yeah, that's the first put down.
He then asks
He's
Penelope.
gently.
Yeah, it wasn't so gentle. I've had
No.
smacks to the face more gentle than that one.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, so not gonna happen here, but if you're desperate enough, I'm willing.
And then he then asks Penelope, how are you supposed to go about proposing to a mythological, well, not mythological, Penelope is mythological, but not this Penelope. Yeah.
If we were writing a story,
theoretically,
you had a story where
theoretically, how was he supposed to propose to a lady if she had no father and no male relative? Hi, Mr. Dankworth. Hi, Mr. Finch. Sir and Sir. Like, poor guys. They just completely get overlooked by their wives, by their mother-in-law, by the ton. They're such sweeties.
well, and technically because they're in-laws and they're not part of the Featherington estate, I think that's the loophole people are playing with there.
Yeah, it's still
what makes it difficult.
Still definitely a diss.
It's very much a diss, but I think that the
Odyssey
only person unless there's some sort of compromise, and Penelope putting it in Whistledown makes it seem like there was, because now she announces the engagement and thwarts her mother's ability to say no without scandal.
Yeah.
So that's the only way they can actually get married, because there is no one associated with the estate that can handle the marriage contract, because Dankworth and Finch they're not the lord of the estate. There is no lord, and that is who can do it.
I still don't think that, being the man that he is, I think that most men in the ton would still seek out any male before resorting to talking to a female about male responsibility. They would not lower themselves to discussing such importance with a simple-minded female.
But I also think that for Debling, and that's the one thing about Penelope that he truly admired, I think admire, was her mind.
I think he does it with Portia because he knows what the answer is going to be and he's going to get what he wants. But any other male in the ton,
but I also think he sees that as the last nail in the desperation coffin. Yeah. Because Penelope's saying, talk to her mother.
Yeah.
Like, if you're willing to talk to my mother, I might be willing to say yes. Like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I need to get married. And I think that's how he views it. And I think that's why he does degrade himself, because that's kind of what it is.
Debling asks if he thinks that the girl in the book would say yes to such a proposal, but Penelope cannot bring herself to say yes. She is still holding on tendrils of hope for Colin as she looks over at him and evasively says, you'd have to read the book to find out. This is a really, really smart choice of words on Penelope's behalf, and I think he actually kind of respects her for it, that she's not just like...
I think this is the mirror scene too, to us seeing just how much Penelope admired Daphne, because this is directly out of the Tao of Daphne playbook, where Prince Philip was dancing with her and he kept trying to enter the conversation where he would propose, and she kept thwarting it until she realized she couldn't anymore, and she said she needed to walk out in the garden, right? So, and she's looking around for the Duke the whole time, but she's being evasive, and she's trying to change the subject, and she's trying to word things in a way that doesn't give intent, doesn't trap her into something until she can have one more conversation with the Duke, is what she's going for. And I think Penelope was the same thing. Like, she is not going to say yes. She absolutely has to.
Well, And the part that I find interesting is Sibling smiles at this, that he 100% would have clocked her. We know that he is watching her every interaction. He knows where
Mm-hmm.
everyone in that room is. He knows where every line of sight is looking. He would have seen her looking over at Colin before she answered. And the fact that she didn't answer definitively, that she had questions still. So I very much think this is definitely one of those moments where he is playing a very calculated game.
Yeah, I think they're both playing chess here in a way, and they're wording things specifically. Like he's trying to word it in such a way where he can get away with saying she said yes. Like he asked her, kind of like Colin and Penelope dancing at the end of season 2. I will
Mhm.
always look out for you. You are special to me as you are to me. And we can kind of see just how Colin thought those were words of intention by the way he acts when he comes home. And
Yeah.
he's so shocked that she's acting this way. And he's like, is there a problem between us? You didn't even write me.
Mhm.
Like he's just flabbergasted. I really do believe he thought those were words of intention. And Debling is kind of trying the same thing. He's playing like, well, if we had this book and the story went this way, how do you think, who would he ask, and would the girl say yes? He's trying to get her to answer those questions so that he very much doesn't want to lose face asking and being rejected. Nobody,
Mhm.
like, he doesn't want rejection just as much as Colin doesn't, and he's trying to hedge his bets and know she's a sure thing. And that's why, like, he got her down to as desperate as he could, because what he offered, he knows what he is offering isn't
Yeah.
that great for people. So like I think he's trying to get her answer truly in a situation like what he's doing there is so bad form in society. Like he cannot even be asking her what her answer would be before he has solicited the family at all. He's
Mhm.
trying to entrap her. He's trying to trick her with semantics. And she doesn't fall for it. She follows the Tao of Daphne and she plays evasive. You've got to read the book to find out.
Mhm.
And she's totally saving herself. She's playing that Penelope Odysseus thing to the hilt, but her Odysseus is not him.
No, it is not.
She's
It is,
saving herself for someone else.
and it kind of plays as that because Colin has gone traveling for a long time and she's sat there biding her time waiting. She's done her tapestries waiting. She has read her books. She has waded through the marinas of it all, which is kind of coded to is it a nymph that he has the kids with? But the
Like,
nymph,
and that's how they get around him actually being like him actually cheating on her. He still loves her, but he falls
Athena.
under the nymph's spell or whatever.
No. So the nymph calls all the men, and I think she kills all of them because they're under her spell. They drink the potion, they drink the drink that she offers, and then kills them, or they fall under her spell. I can't remember exactly, but then Odysseus is warned previously by Athena, I believe it is, that what she was going to do, and so Athena gives him something that bypasses the abilities of the nymph, and he drinks it, and then the nymph is like, "Oh, why isn't this working?" And then she falls in love with him because he's the one person who doesn't fall under her spell. Blah blah blah. But he never loves her, so I feel like he is kind of Odysseus in the story where he has done his traveling for his many years. Well, it's not that many, but in the books,
In the books, it is, yeah.
in Colin's book, he's
And
traveled
she
for.
waited the whole time, yeah.
He was
Book
33.
33. She was 28.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she
book
waited a
Colin and
long.
Penelope are definitely the Odyssey.
Penelope waited, what, 11, 12 years for him?
She fell in love with him 2 days before her 16th birthday, I think.
Yeah, so 12
is
years.
when she met him.
12
years.
12 years.
I got her beat.
I've done my waiting. 12 years
I got
of
her
it.
beat, but still.
Yes,
but
that is my serious black moment.
I followed societal expectations and I did not wait. I moved on and I looked at those other fish in the sea and I settled
and then you realized that they weren't fish,
lowered my standards.
You realized they weren't fish, they were prawns.
Barracuda.
It's not the fish you were looking for.
He was that fish or that thing that's like sea urchin or whatever that's on the bed and it looks like a rock and you step on it, it poisons you and you die.
That's a stonefish.
Whatever. It's a whatever fish.
No, I'm
it looks like something pretty, like it's gonna be okay, and you set your foot on it.
It reminds me of the one from Finding Nemo, and that's you're mixing that. It reminds me of the one from Finding Nemo, and you get the light. You're at the very bottom of the sea, the ocean, and it's dark, and you see this light,
and it's ugly.
Oh, pretty light. Oh my god, it's gonna eat me. That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Looks good.
Yeah. I love Dory. She's just precious.
And I'm not saying it like he was ugly. On the
No.
inside, he was,
Yeah,
though.
That was definitely the righty. I think we have just enough time to talk about some hookers before we go. Hook, line, and sinker. Seeing as we're talking about the fish that hooks you in with the pretty lights, let's
Yeah.
talk about some brothel while my dog barks. Okay. So we then cut, it plays off. Penelope has said maybe. And it kind of teeters out from there. And I think we start to, I don't think Colin knows, obviously, about the proposed proposal. Proposing to propose
No.
to propose.
He seems too surprised when
But he
Mama B
does know
tells
that
him.
their courtship is progressing, and that is enough to kind of unravel him into some revelry. And
Yeah, he's gonna go settle for the life he was gonna make for himself because, yeah,
if
he
he
was
can't have
right.
if he
Penelope's out
can't
of
have
his league.
if he can't have Penelope, he doesn't want anyone. If he isn't enough for Penelope as is, if she's settling for the guy with the, well, she's not, in his eyes,
No,
she's
he
not
doesn't
settling.
believe she's settling.
No.
He thinks she would be settling for him,
Yeah.
and he doesn't want to do that to her.
No.
So he is
she's
conceding.
getting what she deserves. She's getting the
Mhm.
caracals, she's getting the wealth, she's getting the estate and the
Yep.
yeah. And so he goes back to the two ladies, of both of whom are undressing Colin. He's very much a a non-active participant. I love how I just meshed my words together.
Well,
Now.
and this is perfectly. Luke Newton played this perfectly.
Yes,
amazing. As someone who is also, when they didn't get the person that they truly wanted, and then they just went through the motions, because you are expected to couple, you are expected to be this certain kind of person, you are expected to marry, you are expected to whatever. I did that. I went off and I found someone to fill that position, and I set them in that position. And then I went through the motions for years. And he plays it perfectly. He's going through the motions. He believes he's trying that trope out of you the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else.
Yeah.
And it's not working. And I think the look on his face when, like, the first girl barely kisses him, but the second girl actually tries a real kiss. And the look on his face after that, like, I felt like he was thinking, oh no, now Penelope's lips are not the last lips my lips touch.
Yeah.
I very much had that same thought at a point in my life when, you move on and you end up kissing someone else and you're like, I was always able to say that person's lips were the last ones to touch mine, and now I can't say that anymore. And he looks so, like, lost in that moment.
Yeah.
After that girl kisses him and he just realizes. So, like, and I love, like, he wants to get out of there and he's trying to be Colin nice about it. He's like, oh, my enthusiasm is elsewhere this evening. Like, he's trying to get out of it. But they're just like, oh, so you want to watch? You've already paid. Like, they don't want to lose their money, right?
Well, I don't think it's that. I think they're saying whether you enjoy us or not, we are getting the money. You cannot renege.
Well, and I don't think that, because that line was in there so that we know that Colin prepays, because he wants the interaction to feel more real and less transactional. And that makes it transactional. Now it leads us into realize that whole first scene we saw with him and the ladies was complete Colin fantasy, right? He prepaid. He made it seem like he played a role in that room. He was not the Colin Bridgerton we know. He was completely playing something totally different, and now he can't play that anymore because he wants to be who he is, and who Colin is not this guy. Colin is Family Guy. He wants to be married and he wants to have children, and
Colin,
wants
my
to
wife,
have that
Bridgerton.
he wants to be Colin, my wife. He's officially decided he wants to apply for that position, and he just can't do this, and he can't do society Colin anymore, and he's just done. And I think, and I wanted to say this because the last time I watched it, and I really thought about him watching these two girls, and you think he looks away because he's so in love with Penelope now that he just can't possibly participate at all in his eyes. He has to avert his gaze. But I honestly think as innocent as he appeared with Penelope, and yes, he's had, the whole thing is he's had experience. But how much experience has he really had? And we saw how uncomfortable Benedict was when he was first introduced to that world, and he first met Granville and he first witnessed it. I mean, he opened the door, stared, and then shut the door real quick and bolted. So I think Colin realizes he's stuck in that room because he prepaid. And this is the first time he's seen two people of the same sex enjoying each other. Like, what? Like, this is he's struggling, and
Mhm.
not in a bad way. I'm not
Well,
saying like he's a
previously they were,
homophobe or anything.
because we saw him in the first episode, was it? Second episode? One of the very first episodes. Number two. Oh yeah, just
With the other ladies, yeah,
before
the
the
market.
market. So we've seen him with those two women before, but they were very much
Well,
focused
no, they
solely
were different
on.
women
Oh well, sorry. We've seen him with
with two women. Yeah.
two ladies of the night before, but they were focused very solely on him specifically, not each other. And I personally don't see it as him being shocked by that per se. I do very, very much think that
He
he
just
isn't.
realizes he didn't need to be there.
I don't think he is averting his gaze from them. I think it's just his in his gaze they do not exist, because in his mind's eye all he is seeing is those dreams of Penelope, of what it would be like to be with Penelope, and they are there and they are doing their thing, but all he is seeing in his mind is, this is the life that I'm going to miss with Penelope.
Well, I don't think this is the life.
No,
What
no.
he's looking
I mean,
at.
no. Sorry. I
Yeah.
mean, like
Because
he's
I do
thinking of
kind
the
of get that
dreams.
feel. Yeah, I do kind of get that feel like
I think
I don't
he's trying to will himself back into his dream existence where he can be with
yeah.
her.
Like I don't think I can be this, fanciful. I want to go back to my meat and potatoes. I think he was a little surprised, but I also think in those moments that he paid for, where he felt like he was the center of attention, he felt like all eyes, all hands, whatever were on him, right? He's now seeing this and realizing he didn't need to be there at all. These two girls will do whatever because they're being paid to do whatever. And now they're pleasing each other. And he realizes I was not important in that equation.
I don't matter.
And he understands it has no meaning. And that's why in Mondrick's bar, we get the line where he says the one thing that holds true meaning, because he has separated these two things. Yeah. The experience with Penelope is one thing. The experience with these ladies is another. In his mind, he's separated. And that, to me, is important later.
What's ironic, because that is actually literal next part that we go into, but that will have to wait for another episode. So for today, gentle listeners, we will leave it there, and on next episode where we will discuss Mondrick's bar and the proposal at Feathering House and the subsequent conversation that follows afterward. I won't say that we'll get through any more than that, because I honestly think that even getting through those two interactions is going to be a lot of pissy feelings from us, because we have to deal with both the Lord Squad and the Narcs be Narkin all in one episode. It's
Narcs be Narkin!
Narcs be Narkin. So it's going to be a big episode for us for next week. If you have anything in particular you would like us to cover, or any Bridgerton knowledge you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. And if you're enjoying our podcast, please remember to click follow on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening. Additionally, we absolutely love and appreciate so much when you leave a review, when you go to our chat or our Facebook page and talk about anything that you've enjoyed in our podcast. Like, what are things that did they incite some information in your head that you might have noticed? We love when you add to the story. When we say we are when we are the Ladies Bridgerton, we are not just talking about us two. We are very much a community of the ladies, and that includes gentlemen as well.
There's some gentlemen in there.
That includes the gentlemen as well. But we are a collective at this point. Our ideas are a amalgamation of each other's, our own, our listeners. It is people in the community who may not even listen to us, but we like to give accolades to them wherever we get ideas or thoughts from them.
So somebody throws out an idea.
Yeah.
And I love, like, one of my favorite things, and I just said it in our Polin Edits chat, is a lot of our loyals, like, the second it drops, they listen to it. And the last few weeks, I've not been able to listen until later or even the next day.
Oh, I'm like a week later
to re-listen. But it's amazing. Like, I almost love waiting now, because I see what people are asking questions about, or oh yeah, like the thing, I'm not even at that part yet, because I did start listening to it while I was showering, but the part about the Aussie, what are those, the koalas that we talked about, and they're like, oh yeah, you don't mess with those, and I'm like, oh, like it made me so excited, like I remember that, I can't wait to listen. I love that.
And it was Di who was mentioning about the koalas, and also the yoop 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 I can't even remember what the zoop 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 was. Like
I can't wait to hear it. I'm so excited
I
because I have
remember
no
doing
idea.
I remember doing the option like the motion zoop zoop zoop, but I don't remember what it was about.
I can't wait. I'm going like
It
when
was
we're
me
done
who
and I
did it,
crawl into
but
bed, I'm gonna listen to it. And that's the thing. ADHD be ADHD and like we do this, we record it, and then we have to gather new information for the next one. So
I listen to my own podcast that I have recorded with my own voice, and I don't remember the things that I said. It's like listening to someone else's podcast for the first time and be like, oh, that's an interesting thought. Oh, what a good idea. Like, as if it's not me speaking it.
It cracks me up so many times that I listen to the podcast and then I'm like, oh my gosh. And I get ideas like, and usually, truthfully, it's you saying something because you say something and then it sparks something in my brain. So then even when I listen to the podcast, it's the same thing. And we're sitting here having a whole conversation about how we listen to ourselves. And that kind of sounds self-indulgent, but
no, I just
like, I'm not trying to be, I listen for quality assurance.
Yes. I said to my girlfriend today who was visiting, I said sometimes Spotify does funny things and cuts out different portions. So I also like to through to make sure that we have quality control. But we are going to leave it there. Patty, your portion. Take it away, Purple.
Take it away. What?
Purple. Oh. Yeah, you're the purple writing.
And once again, thank you for listening to the musings of two mad women.
Yours truly, Tash the Kiwi.
And Lady Patty.